On the previous edition of Dragon Ball In Depth, I covered the story of Dragon Ball GT, both its creation and the end of GT, which would mark the end of the Dragon Ball anime for over a decade. But that doesn't mean we didn't want it. I can speak for a lot of people when I say that we wanted more Dragon Ball. What I found very interesting is that in the late 90s, Dragon Ball was ending in Japan, but in other parts of the world, it was just beginning. Dragon Ball was just starting to be a hot thing in the United States. In Latin America, it had been cooking for quite some time, and as a result of the popularity and the expansion of Dragon Ball internationally, new fans were being made all throughout the 90s when the show was already over in Japan. But even by the mid-2000s, when pretty much everything was already dubbed, Dragon Ball fans all over the world wanted more Dragon Ball. And as a result of that, we got, well, a number of different hoaxes, tons of fake news floating around about a new Dragon Ball series forever. This went on for a decade with tons of fake stories and hoaxes about new Dragon Ball coming until finally in 2015 we did get a new Dragon Ball TV show, and that would be Dragon Ball Super. But to me, the biggest hoax of them all, the one that stuck and has the most interesting story and actually ties into Dragon Ball Super, believe it or not, is Dragon Ball AF. The story of Dragon Ball AF stretches far beyond it just being a hoax and into a story that I find fascinating, and thus it is the topic for this edition of Dragon Ball In Depth.
この放送はご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りします。
People lying in the Dragon Ball fandom is nothing new. In fact, I've kind of made a career out of debunking these lies. Fake rumors and hoaxes existed in this fandom even before YouTube existed. People preying on the young and the gullible has been something that humanity has done forever because, well, human beings are sick like that. So when you have a TV show and a manga as beloved and as popular as Dragon Ball, there's lots of targets out there to mess with. And the story of AF is kind of like that, but I like to chalk it up to it being more of a mistake, more of a mistranslation, and then people just corroborating it and expounding upon it versus somebody maliciously trying to screw with people. But with that said, the part of the AF story that I find so interesting is that it started off as a hoax and then fans gravitated towards it thinking it was real, but a couple of fans took it to where they made their own version of AF, which confused other fans because it looked so damn real. And it got to the point where one of these fans actually wound up working on Dragon Ball, specifically Dragon Ball Super, and becoming a big shot in the Dragon Ball stratosphere. But let's go back and briefly look at the original hoax and where the Dragon Ball AF story began. So we're going to run through this pretty quickly because I have covered this briefly in the past. This entire AF hoax began with a famous picture which was passed around the internet for such a long time and fooled so many people of what was referred to at the time in the late 90s as Super Saiyan 5 Goku. And people on the web claimed to have authentic sources in Japan that had episodes and things like that of a series that didn't even exist called Dragon Ball AF. But when you mix that with somewhat convincing fan art and people who have no connections in Japan, then you could see why folks were fooled. To the point where Kanzenshu even did an April Fool's prank one year where they claimed to have footage of AF, get it? April Fool's AF. But it wound up being just a prank, bro. At the time, Kanzenshu was called Daizenshu EX, and they knew it wasn't real, but they wanted to screw with you on April Fools. So what is the real story behind that supposed Super Saiyan 5 Goku or whatever? It was revealed years later that the picture didn't even come from Japan. The image actually came from a magazine, a video game magazine in Spain called Hobby Consolas. And it was just fan art that was submitted to the magazine by a man named Daniel Montel Franco. And Mr. Franco would write Dragon Ball AF in the lower right corner of the picture, and thus people on the internet took that as it standing for Dragon Ball After Future, a new series to happen after GT featuring Goku ascending into godhood. That's right, they had a god form for Goku before Toriyama even thought of it. This fake rumor was so big that Funimation themselves had to address it at panels at conventions debunking its existence. That's crazy. That is crazy. The funny part is, the picture isn't even Goku. It's a character known as Tablos. And if you're wondering whatever happened to this guy, well, he's still on the internet. On Instagram, on Twitter, Tablos AF is still putting out fan art, is still putting out fan manga after taking a long hiatus, and still developing his Dragon Ball AF fan fiction. He is the OG creator of Dragon Ball AF, but he would not be the only one. Let's discuss Dragon Ball AF's tie-in to Dragon Ball Super and how Dragon Ball AF helped springboard the career of a very important person, a very important creator for this franchise. Let's talk about doujinshi. Doujinshi literally translates to self-published book, otherwise known as, well, fan fiction, which is a big thing in Japan. Fans of certain franchises create their own manga and actually put it out there, and some companies are okay with it, other companies are not. And as a result of Dragon Ball being over for so many years and so many Dragon Ball fans wanting more Dragon Ball, they figured, well, let's just make our own. And Dragon Ball AF was the launching pad, the inspiration for a lot of these artists. Now, I would love to cover some of this fan manga in the future, and Dragon Ball In Depth is not really a series where I delve into that kind of stuff. That's more for a separate series down the road, but the reason why we have to talk about this is because it has a huge impact on the future of Dragon Ball in a very weird way. So I'll be honest, I don't know how many Dragon Ball AF mangas there are, because if I were to scour the internet, I could probably find tons and tons of them. But the two that are really well known are from two artists. One of them is Young Gigi, who still draws tons of stuff on his Twitter, all over the web. Very, very talented artist. He did his own version of Dragon Ball AF. And the other one is from a man by the name of Toyble. So sometime in the mid to late 2000s, this guy Toyble starts uploading random fan manga to his blog on a website called Live Door. This fan manga would be Dragon Ball AF, his version of the story, taking some ideas from the original concept art and creating an entirely new story that took place after the end of Dragon Ball GT. Now, some people took that fan manga and put it out there as being legitimately from Toriyama because the dude was a pretty good artist even back then, so a bunch of people believed this fan manga to be official work. But it really wasn't, but it looked pretty damn authentic. And it just became this big thing where fans were adding their own storylines, and there was this big synergy at the time, and not just in Japan, about Dragon Ball AF. So this guy Toyble's drawing this Dragon Ball AF manga, doodling stuff for fun, and all of a sudden Shueisha, the official company in Japan, hires a dude named Toyotaro. Now, the worst kept secret at the time was that Toyotaro and Toyble were in fact the same person, to the degree where he actually ended the Dragon Ball AF manga, Toyble that is, saying that he can't do it anymore because he's working on another project. And that other project would end up being Dragon Ball Heroes Victory Mission, the manga, the officially released manga that coincided with the Dragon Ball Heroes video game. Of course, this was only in Japan. Having been recognized for his incredible talent and ability to mimic Toriyama, Toyotaro would continue to work officially for Shueisha, putting out the Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F promotional manga, and he would later be put in charge of doing the Dragon Ball Super manga, which was originally going to be just a promotional vehicle for the anime, but as the months went by, it kind of became its own thing. It became its own sort of adaptation and story, which wound up leading to Toyotaro eventually working side by side with the original creator, Akira Toriyama. And as he continued to develop the Dragon Ball Super manga, he actually became a character designer for the entirety of Super, creating a number of designs of several of the new gods from the 12 universes himself that both Toei would adapt adapt to the anime as well as be featured in the manga. And it all started because Toyotaro did a Dragon Ball AF fan manga. So in a roundabout way, Tablos creating Dragon Ball AF in the late 90s wound up giving Toyotaro a job officially on the series, working with Toei and working with Toriyama, and having a huge impact on the official Dragon Ball Super television series and brand as a whole. So Dragon Ball AF, in a weird, strange, roundabout way, helped in the creation of Dragon Ball Super. Thank you for checking out this edition of Dragon Ball In Depth. And remember, if you're an artist out there, you never know who's watching. You might get hired one day for an official company just because you do some doodles for fun and because you're a fan of a franchise. Toyotaro did it, and I'm sure you can too. Thank you, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.